Canada's Arctic archipelago is one of the most unknown places on Earth. We know less about these islands than we know about Europe. But these islands are really pretty interesting. 40% of all of Canada's land is on these islands. They are around 1% of the world's land area, more land than even Mexico, with less people than Gary, Indiana. Instead of using this land, farm more maple syrup, or house more French people, like the Canadians like to do, they decided to mostly leave it to the polar bears. But it makes sense why. Because it's cold enough to freeze cheddar cheese into being a concrete brick within about 29 human heartbeats. There is also almost no resources to sustain a population outside of small towns and scientists with gigantic glasses. There's no farming you can do, and get this, there's not one O'Reilly's Auto Parts. I don't want to live somewhere where I can't buy 12 carburetors that I can burn in a bonfire for fun. For the 23,000 people that do live on the Canadian Arctic archipelago, 13,000 live on Baffin Island, the biggest island in Canada, the 5th biggest in the entire world. And of those 13,000 people, 8,000 of those people live in the ginormous metropolis of Iqaluit. They have a few grocery stores, a gym, a bar, some houses, but at least they have food prices over double the Canadian national average, and most of the year is in complete darkness to make up for it. They also have to go on a 3-hour flight for a few $1,000s to get to McDonald's to try the crappy Big Arch Burger. This town was built as a military airbase in World War II, and now that we're not in a big world conflict like that, they're just left with a cold, urban, gigantic, huge metropolis of 8,000 people. Outside of that, there's a few small towns dotted across in a big expanse of absolute nothingness. In the entire Canadian Arctic archipelago, there's not one singular living tree. There's not even one living tree. Even Greenland, which is known for being really cold and desolate, has living trees. But the entire Arctic archipelago has none. The only plants that grow there are just a few very niche plants. And the animals that live there include polar bears, muskoxes, Arctic wolves and foxes, and there's very few birds. That just shows how cold it is, that there's almost no flora and fauna on these islands. But the fact that there is nothing here does not mean this area is not important. In fact, these places are becoming strategic for the future of our civilization. The icebergs are melting, and it is revealing a new passage for shipping and global logistics. Most places in the world are worried about flooding as the icebergs melt, but in northern Canada, this melt will be a strategic advantage to the shipping industry that will be an important area to control in the years to come. Glaciers and ice forms need more snowfall than snow melt in a year to grow. And in recent years, the snow has been melting quicker than it has been falling due to rising temperatures. From 1979 to now, the number of days that these islands have had a temperature above freezing is 15 more days than it was in 1979. That may sound like not a lot, but if 5 days in driver's ed is torture for anyone, imagine how the icebergs feel with a 15-day difference every year, even though they can't drive. And the amount of ice in the region is decreasing by 12% every decade. Now, for polar bears stuck in the ocean, it isn't fun. But for the shipping gurus in the Arctic Ocean, this is an opportunity to make some bank. Since the 1500s, explorers have wanted to ship goods from Europe to Asia. And that's how Christopher Columbus discovered America to begin with. But the best we have been able to do is to build the Panama Canal and save you from going all the way around the Americas. But most shipping from Asia to Europe just goes through the Suez Canal in the Indian Ocean because it's a lot quicker. But if the Northwest Passage became easier to use, this could change that. But the passage from China to Europe is still 16,000 miles. So if Fernando wants a Temu bench press that will last about 2 workouts, that'll be about 16,000 miles for him to get it. But the possibility of a Northwest Passage would have that amount of miles to about 8,000. That's why Northwest Passage has been such a big dream for the shipping industry. In 1850, an Irish explorer found the first entire route through the Northwest Passage. And in 1903, An expedition by a Norwegian sailor navigated the first journey through the full Northwest Passage. It was not easy. The entire journey was covered in ice, making it hard to use as an actual industrial shipping route. But because of the ice melt, it has been becoming a resource that more countries want to get their hands on. While Canada claims that the passage is part of their international waters, other governments want to dip their greedy little hands in on this real lucrative future opportunity. This passage is so unexplored that we do not really know if it can be viable for shipping passage in the future. The head of a Canadian mining company claims that in the eastern parts of the passage, the water is barely even 15 meters deep, meaning its viability as a realistic shipping passage would be drastically reduced. And the US says that if these claims are true, that they declare this passage to be international waters. But as the passage becomes more potentially viable as a global transportation hub in the future, it will become a lucrative area for Canada. Random fact about these islands is that on Devon Island, there is a section that is used for training for space missions to other planets. That's how desolate these islands are. Anyways, have a nice day, and God bless y'all.